On this International Human Rights Day, we observe that. We raise awareness to the U.S. Congress and the public, to the media, about this ongoing large-scale human rights atrocity in China. And also, it's very encouraging that there's a large grassroots, massive, peaceful movement, non-political movement happening in China in the past 13 years after the publication of the a book of truth called 9 Commentary on Communist Party that describe how Chinese Communist Party and other communists in the world destroyed the culture, traditional value, the ecosystems in China. More than 80 million Chinese lost their life unnaturally in the past 65 years of ruling in China. And those 80 million people, if holding a hand together, can go around the equator of the earth 6 terms. And that is more than the 5,000 years of Chinese history's unnatural deaths combined. 80 million is more than the First and Second World War casualty combined. And unfortunately, it's not many people know about the details. This is the purpose of the forum that we held every year to raise that awareness that is happening, is still happening in China. Then I'm very honored and with great pleasure that we have a very distinguished panel today from New Zealand, from Taiwan, from different part of the city of the United States to come to speak about that. Then this week is extended week in sessions. The Congress was scheduled to end last Friday because the voting and the meetings. So all the members of the Congress are very busy. So I would ask when the member of Congress come, if possible, we give them the priority to speak and to give brief remarks because they need to go to vote, various. Before we start, let's welcome Congressman Steve King. He is with us right now. It's, the Congressman King is known to leaders in the Congress about many things, small business and others, particularly on this communist agendas and others in the United States and in the world. Without further ado, let's welcome Congressman Steve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction and the chance to be here, and also moving me forward in the queue. I just finished voting on the floor, and I need to go right back to the floor. But this is an important issue, and it's one of the reasons that I'm here. And of course, Trevor Loudon has been a friend for a long time, and I've admired your work, and I wish I had read and digested every single word of it. That's still one of my goals, although I've gotten through a fair amount. And I appreciate the research that he has done as well. And I've made some trips over into that part of the world, into the mainland of China, and also I just came back from Taiwan in September, I believe it was. And here's, as I see this, we're 7+ billion people on the planet. And those that are living and doing the best have the maximum amount of freedom to exercise their religion, their beliefs, and their faith, to raise their families as they see fit, to engage in free enterprise, to live under the rule of law. These pillars of the free society that we so strongly defend here in the United States, that are written into our Declaration of Independence and into our Constitution. And we are called in this country to project those values around the world. And that was part of a prayer that was given in Jamestown in 1607, not very far south of here, right off on the Atlantic coast, where they planted a cross and they knelt and they prayed and they said, God guide us, but to carry these values around the world. And these are the values that I'm here defending today, the values of religious freedom and the values of freedom itself and the rule of law. And it is hard for the very sad news of what has happened to the Falun Gong to penetrate into the consciousness of the United States Congress, let alone the American people. And for some reason, the magnitude of it that we've just heard some description of, and thank you very much for that, the magnitude of it has been missed mostly by the American people and by Congress. 80 million people altogether. And the denying the human right, the natural right, the God-given natural right to worship as you please, live as you please, and to be for a group of people that is 70 to 100 million people strong, to be denied those freedoms and then be persecuted and tortured and maligned and marginalized and killed, and organs sold into the marketplace for somebody else to live off of those. It is an awful record of disrespect and contempt for human rights that comes out of the Marxist government of the Communist Party of China. And I look back at the day of June 1st, 1989, the Tiananmen Square incident. And by the way, I went there, and at 4:30 in the morning, I escaped my security detail and slipped out underneath the tunnel and went out to that place where that man stood in front of that tank and stared that tank down, where they built the Statue of Liberty and displayed it there in the demonstrations that were so inspiring to the rest of the world. And I've long reflected, if the Berlin Wall came down November 9th of 1989, half a year later after the Tiananmen Square confrontation where so many were killed, if that had been on the other side of the historical equation, if the Berlin Wall had come down June 1st, and if the Tiananmen Square confrontation, demonstrations had taken place November 9th instead of the other way around, I think that all Chinese people would live and breathe free today. That anomaly of history that took place inspired all of us, but it wasn't sustainable in the face of the bloody shutdown of the demonstrations that were there. And that strengthened the strong arm of the Communist Chinese government on the mainland, and that enabled them to continue the atrocities, and the Falun Gong movement actually began after that, as I understand it. So I want to, in this United States Congress, and I support the resolution that defends the Falun Gong, that condemns the government of China for persecuting a people that just want to be peacefully worship and live free. How can you deny people the will that want to do that? There's got to be a plus to society, not a minus. And plus, even if they think they're a minus, there's still public freedoms that would need to be promoted around the world. And so that's why I'm here today, is to encourage all of you, let you know that my commitment's there with you, and encourage all of the speakers that are here. You've come, some of you, a long ways to deliver this message. Some of us in Congress will hear this message today. I certainly hear it, and I will do all I can to make sure the rest of them hear it, and I'll stand with you as long as it takes. So God bless you and your freedoms, and can we bring about human rights and decency everywhere in the world for all 7 billion people. Thank you very much.
Can you answer one or two questions?
I could, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Congressman King has actually, he chaired Constitutional Opportunity Society at the Congress for more than 10 years, which is a powerful caucus serve as the conscience of constitutional conservative in the Congress. He's a leader on that. Okay, then I know he won't be able to stay long. We have a member of press. Do you have any question for him for one or two? Yes.
Congressman King. We have this observing this Tuidang movement, which is withdraw from the Communist Party in China. We have like more than 200 million people withdrawing from the organizations. Similar to that, we see like heavy infiltration in this country by the communism. So is there any way you can think of, like, is there any similar thing we can do in this country? Because for that movement in China, even though there's such a large number of people withdrawing from the Communist Party, the party itself cannot do that much to stop it. So that's like a very peaceful but very effective and a powerful movement, can change China, forever for the better. So is there anything similar we can do in other countries? Similar things, like peaceful withdraw the support, from the evil.
Well, I think that what you're doing here is good today, and if you can identify a forum anywhere across this country, college, universities, for example, will be one of those places where you can raise the awareness of the cause, and it takes a long time to penetrate it out through a society. But you also should know that every word you say, every word that you write, every time you stand up for what you believe in, it does make a difference. It might only make a little bit of a difference, but it might make a lot of difference too. I mean, I'm still here inspired by the man who stood in front of that tank in June 1st of 1989. So your voices do matter. Second thing is, what can I do? The ambassador to China is Terry Branstad, Ambassador Terry Branstad. He was the governor of Iowa for 30 years, a longtime friend. And so when I see him, this is an agenda that I will put into his ear, and I'm going to ask him, take that to your friend Xi, and make the case. Just tell him, back off. America wants you to back off and respect people, and quit discriminating against and persecuting the Falun Gong. That's something I can do. You do everything you can do. If I do all I can do, if we all do that, then we're making progress in the right direction. And also, this isn't for me, I was in Taiwan, in Tibet a few years ago, Taiwan a few months ago, Tibet a few years ago, and there I could see the Chinese influence going into Lhasa and essentially supplanting some of the Tibetans, and I could see that it was an effort focused against their culture and civilization that's there. And I don't know why that's troublesome to the communist Chinese, to have a culture of people that live up there in the high altitudes, that mind their own business and live peacefully. They're causing nobody any trouble. They just don't like the ideology that threatens the atheistic approach. We have Christians in China too. And I want them to be free and have the ability to worship freely. And so that's how I'll try to push this message. And now I challenge you, do all you can with whatever platform you have. I think I need to run. I got the signal. Thank you very much. Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah, by the way, I'm Professor Nie, one of the organizers of this event. Please be reminded to turn off your cell phone or turn your cell phone in vibrate mode. Okay. Then, so let's proceed with the program. The first speaker is Dr. Zhuwei Huang. He's a mechanical scientist from NASA, Goddard Space Flight Center. He's the spokesperson of Falun Dafa practitioner in Washington, D.C., association in Washington, D.C. Is one of the organizer. We have two. One is Tuidang movement, Tuidang Center. So Dr. Huang will update you with the ongoing persecution of Falun Gong in China, and with the help of a few victims recently escaped from China to Washington, D.C. areas. Dr. Huang, please. And please sit up front, so we don't have any empty seats here. Okay, try to sit up front.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Professor Nie, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And it's very, actually, we're the topic, human rights atrocities. Yes, I'm going to have a review of Falun Gong practitioners' human rights atrocity in China. And this year marks the 67th International Human Rights Day. However, in China, the bloody killing of its citizens by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, are still doing that. And that is the persecution of Falun Gong, which has lasted for more than 18 years. Between 92 and 99, as millions of Falun Gong practitioners who believe in the teachings of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, which is rooted from the traditional Chinese culture. And Falun Dafa had been spreading rapidly in China and around the world. At that time, even many People's Liberation Army soldiers, officers, and Communist Party members were also practicing Falun Gong. However, the then CCP's leader, Jiang Zemin, was jealous and feared of losing control of the doctrine of communism, which is deceit, violence, and atheism. So he used the totalitarian regime of the CCP to launch a merciless and bloody persecution against Falun Gong in July 1999. So in the past 18 years, under the extermination policy of, quote, ruin their reputations, cut off their financial resources, and destroy them physically, end of quote. Plus, quote, if they are beaten to death, simply say they have committed suicide, end of quote. And, quote, just cremate their bodies without checking their identities, end of quote. So millions of Falun Gong practitioners were abducted by the CCP and forced to be locked in labor camps or mental hospitals and sentenced to long jail terms without due process and even persecuted to death. Falun Gong practitioners were unjustly regarded as, quote, CCP's target of dictatorship, end of quote. They are devoid of their natural human rights they deserve, and they are under enormous human rights violations of physical and the mental persecution. Not to mention the most astonishing forced organ harvesting from living Falun Gong practitioners, as mentioned earlier by Professor Nian.
So, Dr. Daniel Rohrabacher, Congressman Rohrabacher is here. He's the sponsors to actually reserve the room for us today. We want to thank him, and he's the well-known, the most forceful and outspoken congressman on national security, freedom, human rights, particularly on organ harvesting crimes. So without further ado, we have Congressman Daniel Rohrabacher with us to give a few remarks.
There you go. If the situation continues the way it is in China, there will be horrible things happening to all the countries of the world within our lifetime. If the situation in China does not improve, where you have a fascistic dictatorship trying to control people's lives in a dictatorial way, without opposition parties, without opposition newspapers, without any opponents in the press, and or no political parties, etc. If you have an unbridled force like that of people who obviously are corrupt and who are taking resources away from people who are less powerful, that doesn't just mean something bad for China. It means that that group will probably become a threat to the whole world. Our hope for peace with China rests with the people of China rather than siding with the government of China. And I think the Tuidang movement is vitally important to give those people who are in this evil system a chance to get out, and a chance not to be participating in the repression of their own people and a threat to the world. I think that sometimes people mistake our harsh criticism of China as being a criticism of Chinese people, and it is not. And the Tuidang movement will, I think, hopefully communicate with the world that even within the communist movement itself, there are many people who don't agree with what the goals and the methods are of that clique that runs China. So I want to congratulate you, and I consider, as I say, you are the people who will help get that message to the people of China. And we must, as Americans, stand behind everything that you're doing to make sure that China and the United States remains friends by making sure there is democratic reform, making sure that we have a more open society in China, and in that way the American people and the Chinese people are going for the same goals. We want this to be a more peaceful world, and it won't happen with militarism. We won't have, and even in our own society, I'm concerned that with excuses, with things going on overseas, that we ourselves will allow America to become a militarized society. No, the answer to that challenge, I say the number one challenge in the years ahead, which is a fascistic, totalitarian, aggressive China, the solution to that is work with the Chinese people. Reach out to them, and you are America's hand out to the people of China. We want to be friends. Please do not succumb to the regimentation of your dictators, of the fascists who run your country. So thank you all for what you're doing. I think it's important. I have 13-year-old kids at home. My wife and I were blessed with triplets 13 years ago. And if they are going to live in a peaceful world, it will be how successful we are in reforming China and reaching out to the people and creating that type of a good alliance with the people of China rather than with the government of China, which is not a real government because it doesn't have the consent of the people who they govern. So let us reach out together. Let's make it a better world. Thank you very much.
You want to answer one question?
Okay.
Yeah, for the member of press, if you have any question, one for Congressman Rohrabacher. This is Ms. She's the president of the Tuidang Center.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations. God bless. This is very important.
Mr. Rohrabacher, we're almost missing on a couple of occasions. I've spoken to your Republican club down there.
Okay, well, now we have.
Yeah, any questions? And stand.
Melissa, take one more.
One question.
Yes. Yes, you.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been talking to American people, Catholics and Christians. And one thing I found that they all fear that they're like communism hidden in a way in American society that's threatening their own religious freedom and their traditional value. And how do you think that we can, join hands together and, to eliminate this communism evil? Do you have a plan for that?
Well, communism is what created the dictatorship in China. The dictatorship in China is not a communist dictatorship, however. They're fascist. They have nothing to do with Karl Marx. I mean, you've got a bunch of people raping the country and taking millions and millions of dollars away from poor people. That's not communism. I mean, communism was supposed to be that they didn't have profit motive and things like that. So that's, but that's what communism always leads to. Communism always leads to a more fascistic and controlled society. And what we have to do here is to make sure that those people who are Christians and others, people who have various religious faiths, we believe in religious freedom and being able to worship God or not worship, but we must work with people who believe in freedom of religion and people who are whether they have their own beliefs. It doesn't have to be Christians, I have to tell you that. But there's lots of Buddhists and there's lots of Jews and there's lots of Muslims who live in America. We have to make sure people of goodwill stand together in unity. And especially, I hope, hopefully those Christian communities in the United States will identify with and be helping at least their fellow Christians in China. And I know that I am a Christian. And I will just say that one of the things that I have prayed for is that the people of China have the ability then to see God and to convert to Christianity. But I'm not advocating that. I mean, that's just what I pray to God for, because I think that the greatest thing for China would be to make sure that whether it's Christianity or another faith, that freedom of religion become part of the soul of China, where everyone respects how someone has their spiritual life. And that's what it's all about. It's not about one religion or the other. So with that said, I'm going to do my best, but I'm really grateful to all of you. If you're successful, my 13-year-old daughter and my 2 daughters and 1 son will live a better life because it'll be a more peaceful life, just like all those 13-year-olds over in China. So God bless you. Thank you very much. All right. He looks deep in thought there.
Can you see us? Can you see Griffin?
No, I cannot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay.
I've got some people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Give Congressman another round of applause. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you for your patience. There's some member of Congress is in very busy schedule. Let's continue. Zui, you hasn't finished, right? Let's continue his talk.
And today, we do invited several victims of the persecution here with us. For example, Mr. Wang Chunyan. Chunyan is okay. Do you bring? Okay. She herself was locked in and out of jails and labor camps for 7 years, and suffered tortures and forced labor. And her husband was murdered by police when he was trying to protect her, not to tell people her whereabouts. And her 2 other sisters, today, Chun Yin, and the older sister, I don't know, is she here? Okay, Chun Rong. Yeah, they were also, one is the CEO of an successful accounting firm. The other was a registered nurse. They were also put in jails for many, many years, just because they practiced Falun Gong. And sadly, Chun Yin and also witnessed 20 of her fellow practitioners persecuted to death. And as you can see, some of those photos were those her fellow practitioners persecuted to death. I don't know. We don't have too much time. Do you want to say anything about this? Chun Yan. Her friends and relatives, about 20 practitioners, they are all Falun Gong practitioners persecuted to death. Her husband also killed because of the persecution. Yeah, there are 4,000, more than 4,000 practitioners that got persecuted to death, as listed on Minghui website. And the most horrible is the forced organ harvesting from living Falun Gong practitioners. One of her, the first one got persecuted to death was that lady, Miss Li Zhongling. And the second time when she was arrested, Miss Ding Zhenfang was persecuted to death.
他判刑了8年，在第3年的时候，在大北监狱被迫害致死。
And she was sentenced to 8 years in jail, and the 3rd year she was in jail, she got persecuted to death in Dabei jail.
这仅仅是对法轮功迫害的一个缩影。
Yeah, this is just a tip of iceberg of the persecution. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Yeah. And another example, like Mr. Du Haipeng. Haipeng, yeah, he's standing. Would you like to come forward, Haipeng? His mother, Mrs. Yuan Xiaoman. Do you have her photo? Haipeng? Okay. Yeah, can you come forward? Her mother, Mrs. Yuan Xiaoman, because she was trying to, okay, actually her husband, Yuan Xiaoman's husband, was severely persecuted when in jail. They are all Falun Gong practitioners. Then she filed a lawsuit, which later Teresa will talk about this more. Filed a lawsuit against Jiang Zemin, just like 210,000 other practitioners did for themselves or their family members under China's judiciary system, quote unquote. However, not only the court didn't take her case, but she was also abducted by police and put in jail. And Mr. Du has been working non-stop to rescue his mom. Do you want to say a few words?
现在我已经得到了美国的一些议员的支持，然后也是在加紧的营救这个我母亲的这个工作。
Yeah, so far I've got some support from the U.S. congressman, so I'm working very hard to try to rescue my mom.
我相信有一天正义会得到伸张，然后无辜的人会得到释放。
I believe one day the righteousness will win, and my mom will be released free.
退党大潮是必不可挡。
And the quitting CCP, the wave of quitting CCP, is non-stoppable. It's non-stoppable. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And we have another. Okay, this young girl, 16-year-old Miss Xu Xingyang, or Cindy, accompanied by her mother, Mrs. Chi Lihua. They escaped from China to Thailand and finally rescued to the United States early this year. You want to show the photos? And Cindy's father, Mr. Xu Dawei, was sentenced to 8 years in jail when she was only 3 months old. 8 years later, and in the meantime, when she was only 9 months old, her mom was arrested, and nobody could take care of her. But anyway, 8 years later, although released from jail, Mr. Xu Dawei passed away in 13 days due to his poor physical conditions. As you can see the photos, suffered from the torture and the mistreatment in jail. And Cindy only stayed with her father for 13 days in her life. This morning, I think she just shared her sad story with her classmates at Richard Montgomery High School in Rockville. And we do have some of her testimony available later if you want. So do you want to say a few words? Use that microphone.
我从小吧就见过我外婆。
大声一点。
然后就是我8岁那年，就是回家13天他就过世了。然后我后来又去到那个雄狮学校，就是大法弟子班的学校。然后因为老师都是法轮功学员，然后也是因为一个信仰，然后所有老师备课。
Let me translate a little bit. And she's saying when she was in China, she couldn't go to normal schools. So she attended this Lion School, which was founded by Falun Gong practitioners, the teachers, the principal. However, those practitioners, the teachers and principal were all arrested by police. So she couldn't go to any school.
我老师被抓是就是前一天，然后是我的生日。
And the day her teacher was arrested, the day before the arrest, that was her birthday.
我跟老师说，就是我的生日嘛，然后老师说给我准备生日礼物，这样，然后第二天左等右等，然后一直都没有等到老师。
And the second day, even that day, the teacher said she's gonna prepare a birthday gift for her, but next day she couldn't find her teacher.
所以就是那个生日蛋糕，我就一直没有吃到。
So she didn't eat that birthday cake.
然后今天上午我在我的学校，然后把我的故事讲给我的老师。
And this morning, I told my sad story to my teacher here at Montgomery High School.
讲给我的同学，然后他们就是在这种自由的国家，然后给我准备了，我现在就是在国内就是没有吃到那个蛋糕。
And they prepare a lot of delicious food for her this morning.
然后我也很感动，因为就是在那个国内的环境根本就不可能做。
Yeah, she was very touched. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, as we just mentioned, all those practitioners, they know or they experience, such as said, persecution. And according to the information from the falun-dafa-minghui.org website, as of today, there are 4,160 Falun Gong practitioners persecuted to death, with identifiable names and evidence for the tortures they suffered, like Cindy's father. And in the first half of 2017, at least 800 Falun Gong practitioners. This is the first 6 months of 2017, 800 at least Falun Gong practitioners were sentenced without due process. And more than 500 practitioners were sentenced due to their filing to sue Jiang Zemin, just like Da Peng's mom. And the human rights abuse of Falun Gong practitioners in China has been the worst in 21st century. The sheer numbers of persecuted people, the time span, and the brutality, including the forced organ harvesting, have shocked the whole world. Hundreds of thousands of happy families are destroyed. Husbands, wives, and children are suffering the tragedy of broken homes, unbridled insult, and trampling of human dignity by Chinese Communist Party. So it is imperative for all kind-hearted people to stand up to stop this human rights atrocity. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Zhu Wei, for that. Again, please turn your cell phone off or on the vibration mode. Let's proceed with the program. The second speaker, which is also the co-sponsor, co-organizer of this event, is Ms. Yi Rong, who is the president of the Global Tuidang Center, or so-called Global Service Center for Quitting Chinese Communist Party. She's a leader of the more than 300 sites in different parts of the countries, including China's, to help people to understand was the evil nature of the communists, and to cut the tie. We stand to seek the freedom of the mind and hearts. Without further ado, Yi Rong, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, today I'm very honored to speak on behalf of the Global Service Center for Quitting the Chinese Communist Party here in the Cannon House Office building of the U.S. Congress about the Tuidang movement, the largest peaceful grassroots movement in Chinese history. Tuidang in Chinese means withdraw from the party. It is the act of publicly renounce the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and its affiliate organizations, the Communist Youth League and the Communist Young Pioneer. I'm very happy to see that, as of today, over 292 million Chinese people have withdrawn the Communist Party and its affiliate organizations.
In about 2 months, according to current registration statistics, the number of Chinese people who quit the CCP will reach 300 million. What are the non-commentaries? The Tuidang movement started in November 2004 after the publication of the editorial series Non-Commentaries on the Communist Party by the Epoch Times. The non-commentaries exposes the censored history of the CCP, such as Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution of the Tiananmen Square massacre, remain largely unknown by the Chinese people. It is history of the crimes that CCP committed during its 68 years of ruling. The non-commentary describes how Chinese people have suffered numerous oppressions and social unhavens under party rule, resulting in an estimate of about 80 million Chinese people unnatural deaths. The CCP's main weapon of oppression the Chinese people have always been through mind control and brainwashing, undermining moral values, and instilling terror and fear, as well as fundamentally opposed to 5,000 years of traditional Chinese history, value, and virtue. The result has been the corruption of Chinese society in every level. Although the non-commentary is subject to intense censorship in China, untold millions of copies have been printed and distributed throughout the mainland and the rest of the world. Millions of copies of non-commentaries have been and continue to be distributed throughout China via email, fax, and underground printing houses. As more people learn about the suppression history of CCP, there is increased desire for people to individually renounce the party, politically, mentally, and spiritually. The non-commentaries calls for return to the values and the virtues that once made China great. It offers a vision of China's future with a fair and open society, a free and prosperous people, and a society without the CCP. Tuidang is the largest peaceful grassroots movement in Chinese history. The Tuidang movement emerged shortly in late 2004 after the publication of the non-commentaries. As more people submitted their statement, the Epoch Times started publishing them on its website and newspaper, jump-starting the grassroots movement we call the Tuidang movement. The number of people who have quit the CCP can use their names or alias for safety. People from all walks of life, ethnic backgrounds, professions, and ages from China and around the world have submitted their statement of withdrawing. Today, the Tuidang movement has grown to become the world's largest grassroots movement. Tuidang movement has attracted millions of Chinese people from all walks of life, including high-ranking officers, party institutions, teachers, police, soldiers, students, workers, and farmers, etc. Among them, including human rights lawyer in China Gao Zhishan, Guo Guoting, Zheng Enchong, who also have publicly renounced CCP, Chen Yonglin, the former Chinese diplomat in Australia, who also publicly renounced Chinese Communist Party in 2005. He was responsible for monitoring Falun Gong in the embassy. He said, separating ourselves from CCP is conscious awakening for all of us Chinese, and that is the hope for our future as a nation. Hao Fengjun, an officer from Tianjin City 610 office, also renounced the CCP. He said, quitting the party was an inevitable trend. It's changing China. It will save China. Huang Xiaoming, a silver medal winner for 200 meter swimming during the 1988 Olympic Games. She renounced her CCP membership in December 2004. She said, "Non-commentary will help me to see through the CCP. I'm now ashamed of once being a member of the Communist Party of the organization." So Tuidang goes beyond political activism. It is a process of Chinese people clearing their conscience of years of party culture through revolution, campaigns, propaganda, media censorship, imprisonment, and mass killing over the past 68 years by the CCP. It finally gives Chinese people a chance to reflect on their own lives without the CCP to a free China. The Tuidang volunteers. The Tuidang Center, or Global Service Center for Quitting the Chinese Communist Party, was registered in the United States in June 2005 as a nonprofit organization in order to better facilitate and coordinate the Tuidang movement globally. In 2007, the Tuidang Center office was set up in Flushing, New York. This is one of the fast-growing Chinese community in the United States. Tuidang has a large number of volunteers, both inside and outside China. Those volunteers collect statements from individuals or groups. Inside China, our volunteers make great efforts to speak with party members or the Communist Party officers at the great risk of their lives. They might get imprisonment or, after they got arrested. Outside China, you can see our volunteers at tourist spots and Chinatowns all over the world, including Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, Paris, Australia, New Zealand. They speak with Chinese citizens, encourage them to quit the CCP. How about the Communist Party's response to the Tuidang movement? The Communist Party authorities and public security agencies have responded to the Tuidang movement through censorship and a lot of measures, including the arrest of a large number of volunteers. A 2005 study conducted jointly by researchers from Harvard University, Cambridge University, and University of Toronto found that the words related to Tuidang movement were the most intensively censored terms on the Chinese internet. A series of editorials published in the Journal of the People's Liberation Army in March 2011 also mentioned about the army officer who, met a Tuidang volunteer and who persuaded him to Tuidang. Great changes happening in China. Tuidang movement is peacefully disintegrating the Chinese Communist Party and is building freedom in China. Tuidang, or quit the party, refers to Chinese people making the decision to renounce the oath they gave to the CCP. While it seems simple on the surface, it brings about profound changes in every citizen. It breaks the circle of brainwashing in Chinese people that the Communist Party has used to maintain its absolute power. In this way, Tuidang is changing China by changing the hearts and the minds of the Chinese people. I believe one reason why the Tuidang can succeed in changing China, where so many other ways of ideas who try to change China has failed in the past. Because Tuidang is spiritual awakening. It cleanses the conscience of those who have taken part in crimes against other Chinese people, and it reconnects Chinese people to the true heritage, China's traditional ethics and values. Tuidang is leading Chinese people to stand up to the communist regime. Right now is a turning point in history when over 292 million Chinese people are leading the way to a new future without communism in China. Tuidang is paving the road for a peaceful disintegration of the Chinese Communist Party, and in fact, for the disintegration of communism throughout the world. It is laying the essential foundation for openness and freedom in China. The Tuidang movement has not only been supported by Chinese individuals who want to see these changes happen in China, but also a certain number of Western people, VIPs. We hope people from all over the world will pay great attention to this, the largest grassroots Tuidang movement that is happening and quietly changing China. I hope more VIPs and more, people from the rest of the world will support the Tuidang movement, support Chinese people's choice for freedom, for tradition, and support China without CCP. We believe that a China without Chinese Communist Party will not only contribute to China, to Chinese people and society, but also will contribute to world peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ro. Yeah. If you have any question, please hold the questions. Those distinguished panelists will still be here. After the last speaker, we can open for question and answer sessions. Then the next speaker is a very special friend of mine and a true hero. He's from the other part of the world, the Southern Hemisphere. He's a New Zealand-based author, speaker, filmmaker, a political activist with travelondons.com and keywiki.org. He's a former vice president of the ACT New Zealand Party. He's one of the renowned interviewees in the films Agenda Grinding Down America. He has his own book and the films of The Enemies Within. Without further ado, trainers.
Thank you very much, and it was great to enjoy a meal with you last night, and great to meet you people. I've been a big admirer of the Falun Gong movement for some time, and I'm very proud to be amongst you today. I understand the spiritual foundations of your movement and how that has brought you in direct opposition to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I need to contradict something I think that Mr. Rohrbach has said. I have a lot of respect for him, but I think he misunderstands the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. A lot of Americans think that China is abandoning communism because they have moved into a business culture, capitalism, etc. Well, if you're a Marxist, and we have to remember that President Xi, in September at the Communist Party convention, said that we must never abandon Marxism. Marxism is the soul of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, what does he mean? See, if you're a Marxist, you believe there are You believe there are 5 stages of development. You believe there is primitive communism. That is the caveman stage, where you live together in communal societies. Then you have feudalism, where you have warlords running different areas and they have peasants and serfs working for them. And then you have capitalism, where business starts to flourish and wealth is created. And then you move into socialism, where the government takes over all of the wealth and redistributes it. And then you go on to communism. Well, right now, China has acknowledged the Chinese Communist Party made a mistake. They acknowledged they made a mistake in trying to go directly from feudalism and the feudalism straight into socialism and bypassing capitalism. So that this was a mistake. So they are now going back into capitalism to build up the wealth and build up the military strength, so then they can go back into socialism and on to world domination. And we must never forget that the Chinese Communist Party, as all communist movements, aim for world domination. So this is something we must understand. China is still on the communist road. The Chinese Communist Party is still the #1 enemy of humanity, and anything you people can do to reduce the power of the Chinese Communist Party, to pull people out of the Chinese Communist Party, will benefit humanity in the long term. Because the Chinese Communist Party is the epitome of evil on the planet. It is a system that draws people in with the promise of wealth and riches and advancement, and corrupts people's souls. They betray their own people, their own countrymen, for personal advancement. It is the biggest corrupting force in the world. And we have to oppose it. We have to stop it in any way we can. Because it isn't. Right now, China is building 60 warships a year. America is building 9. China wants 400 nuclear submarines in the Pacific. What, to defend themselves against Mongolia or what? It is to challenge America. It is to challenge the West. Right now they are buying up politicians in Australia and New Zealand. They are dominating Africa. They are buying up huge influence in South America, Latin America, and also in the United States and Canada. The Canadian Security Services, the Canadian spies, in 2009 released a report which said that the Chinese Communist Party had bought control of, not influence in, control of the legislatures of both British Columbia and Alberta, Canada's 2 richest provinces. They were now controlled by the Chinese Communist government. Well, that report got about 2 days of play and then it disappeared. And the Communist Chinese are still controlling Canada's richest provinces today. In California, they're buying up politicians, they're buying up resources, and they're influencing your politics. Now, the Chinese Communists have basically taken control of the Chinese community in San Francisco through their communist organization, the Chinese Progressive Association. They put Ed Lee, who just recently died as the mayor of San Francisco, worked with a woman called Rose Pak, an agent of China, and they have dominated that region. They are still trying to get control of the Chinese population in New York through the Asian American, what is it? Asian Equality, Asian Americans for Equality, the Chinese Communist Front in New York. And their member, John Liu, stood for the mayoralty of New York. The plan was with the Communist Chinese to then stand up for the presidency of the United States. And thanks to the Epoch Times and their wonderful journalism, that man was stopped. But they are still working to influence your politics. And I'll give you an example. We just had the Chinese government, the Communist Party, has targeted many Republican politicians, but a lot more Democrats. They are more involved with the Democrats since the days of Bill Clinton. Now, there was a recent elections in Virginia, very close to here, where the Republicans got beaten badly. Now, there is a Marxist pro-Chinese organization in that state called the New Virginia Majority. It's run by a man called John Liss. He's actually an American, but he's a Maoist communist, and they are working to sign up hundreds of thousands of Muslim voters, Latino voters, black low-income voters in that state to get them to vote for the Democratic Party. They've also signed up over 60,000 felons, people who have been in jail, who were not allowed to vote, but this organization got that changed so they could vote. And now they have basically taken control of that state. Now, that was completely organized by a pro-Chinese communist group, and how they did it, they use very sophisticated electoral information. They know exactly which people live in which cities, in which streets, in which towns, and which way they will vote. And so they go and target those people and register them to vote and take them to the polls. And that sophisticated information is generated by a man called Steve McClure, a communist, a member of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, who is working out of Wuhan University in China. So a Chinese university is supplying the information that pro-Chinese communists in this country are using to turn elections in this country right now. So we have to understand there is a huge communist Chinese influence in this country, out of San Francisco, out of New York, out of many other places, out of Houston, that is actively working to install their people in positions of power and flip this country towards the Democratic Party, which they believe and they have infiltrated and they believe they can work with more effectively than the Conservatives. So as Falun Gong practitioners, I commend completely the work you are doing in China to weaken the power of the Chinese Communist Party. That will benefit you all, but you need to understand the extensive influence that the Chinese Communist Party has on American politics, that they are controlling much of Californian politics, they control much of Oregon politics, much of Washington politics, a lot of New York politics, Asian Americans for Equality, which used to be called the Communist Workers' Party, a pro-Chinese group, works with Chuck Schumer, the senator. It works with Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator from New York, and many other New York politicians. So when you deal with American politicians, you have to understand and you have to be very discerning to pick the genuine anti-communists, the genuine people who will stand up against China, the Chinese Communist Party, not just the ones who will say, oh yes, we support human rights, but then do nothing. You have to find the real, genuine articles like Steve King and Dana Rohrabacher and others, and not listen to the Nancy Pelosi's of the world and the Chuck Schumers of the world, who are very much in bed with the communist movement. They will be nice to you, they will say lovely things and be friendly, but they will do nothing to help you, because their friends are doing business deals with China, their friends are communists, their friends are supportive of the goals of the Chinese Communist Party. And just a little bit of self-promotion. If you want to see how deep the communist penetration is of your government, just check out my movie sometime, Enemies Within. The Enemies Within. Just go to Amazon Prime, you can see it for free, but it will show you how deeply the communist movement has penetrated this country. So this is the big challenge of our time. We are faced with a Chinese Communist Party that has a huge amount of money and is using that money to buy up influence in Africa and Europe and South America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. One of our New Zealand members of Parliament, a Conservative, was recently exposed as he's a Chinese national, he was an instructor in the Chinese spy school. Now he's on our Foreign Affairs Committee in our Parliament. Who do you think he's working for, people? And this was exposed, and he's still there. So recently a Greek Australian member of Parliament was exposed as feeding information to the Chinese embassy there, to intelligence information, to warn the Chinese spies of any investigation by Australian authorities. So these things are going on all over the world, people, and they're going on right here in Washington, D.C. and in New York. So the influence of the Chinese Communist Party does not end at the Chinese borders. It is very, very extensive in your country, and we need to take that into account when we're planning our political activities and our operations in this country. Many of the congressmen you talk to are not your friends. They will pay lip service, but they are really working in the interests of the Chinese Communist Party, the Cuban Communist Party, or others. So I want to commend Falun Gong for the work it's done. I'm a great admirer of your work. You are really the only force in the world that is making an organized effort to stop the Chinese Communist Party's evil designs. Many of you have suffered. I was heartbroken by the stories of these ladies here and the young lady over there who have lost relatives and friends to this tyranny. And I commend you for standing up. I commend you for your virtues of forbearance, for your virtues of compassion, because these are what keep us sane in a bad world, people. If we have the compassion, if we have the honesty and the morality, we can get through this and we can win. But we have to be strong ourselves. And I admire you ladies for what you have gone through. You know, most Americans do not understand how you have suffered, the cruelty and indignities you have suffered from merely trying to be good people. And more Americans need to understand it, and the American government needs to be much stronger on the Chinese Communist Party. And as Steve King said, to ally with the people of China and not the government of China. Because the people of China are like everybody else. They want freedom and dignity and their human rights. The government of China wants tyranny for everybody. We cannot make friends with the government of China. We can only make friends with the good people of China. So I commend you for your work, and I'm very proud to be invited to speak to you today and very grateful to be among you. So thank you very much.
Okay, for the member of the press, okay, if you need to interview some of the distinguished speakers, you can invite them outside in the hallway, because I know they have a very busy schedule. Like Trevor will catch the airplanes right after the forums, so feel free to invite some of them to the outside. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Loudon. Your experience, the advices, it's very useful, very valuable to us. Yeah.